It's been gone since July, but making an epic return is All or Nothing. A review of franchises where, if the majority do not get 3 or above, they're gone forever. Well, at least according to Mr. Super Oz. So, this week, Brandon returns. He and we review Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. After the open, hear what we think. Brandon, welcome.
Hey.
Unbreakable did something, and by did I mean began with something that I forgot, which was this beautiful full screen graphic breaking down the year 2000 statistics when it came to number of pages on an average, average panel, average price, and the like of comic books. Now, obviously, within that, it went from the lowest of low amounts to the highest of high amounts, and I thought it was interesting. And like I said, I forgot it'd been a good few years since I'd watched the movie. But with that in mind, the topic of comic books leads perfectly to telling you if you'd like my 68-page graphic novel, Everlasting Survivors, All Day Long, Volume 1. There are limited first printings available at Etsy.com. Link in the description. This is the Jeff Hicks cover. That's the Nick Crook cover. So, as I was saying, it'd been a while since I had watched Unbreakable, and a little bit of time since I'd watched Split. I had never watched Glass before, but, with it being 2 months since, or between our first All or Nothing and now, I thought, hey, it's spooky, it's creepy, it's a odd type of season. So let's talk about films that have a lot of odd and spooky, creepy, weird themes about them. And so we're talking about, like I said before we began, the Eastrail 177 Trilogy, which is Unbreakable, Split, and Glass. Mm-hmm. How long had it been since you had watched Unbreakable? Because, like I said, it'd been a while for me.
Yeah, probably like 4 years.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so it's been a while, but I always loved that movie ever since I first saw it, so it was not a problem.
Oh, absolutely.
Putting him back in and going like,
oh, for sure.
We're having a good time.
It definitely holds resonance with me because I remember being in a car accident the summer after seeing it, and just feeling unbreakable because I was fine. Like the van was hit on the slidey door part and flipped over onto the driver's side. And I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. I just had the wherewithal to catch myself and end up standing on the armrest of the passenger seat. My mom was worried. She was, and my sister was in the back, and she was, uncomfortable. But like just in that moment, I felt like legitimately, I felt unbreakable. Like, oh wow. And I'm sure I wouldn't have even thought of that concept had it. I'm not sure, but I suspect I wouldn't have even had that concept cross my mind if it wasn't for the film. But I've always had big love for this movie.
Oh yeah. I mean, heck, starting from the beginning, the opening shot, everything you see Bruce Willis on the train, and he's thinking about, hey, there's a nice looking lady right here. You know what?
What's funny, I think that's the opening scene. I always think that's the opening scene is the train, but the opening scene is actually the department store where Isaiah is being born.
Right, you're right. I get it. You're right. I keep forgetting.
I do that myself. So I fully agree with you that it feels like that's the beginning, because because I tend to think of it in that way, where we begin on the train and then we cover both birth and the comic book origins,
Mm-hmm.
legitimately, of Samuel L. Jackson's character, but it's not the case. They're actually split up. The birth scene comes before the train scene, and then the comic book origins come after.
I'm gonna say one thing because I do want anybody who hasn't seen this film. This is a big spoiler. We're gonna talk about it, so I just think that especially for this film.
Well, here's my thing. You know this as a personal thing. I don't believe there is such a thing as a spoiler, and reason being is if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will say before we continue, this movie is not good. It is great. And so whatever we say, still go watch it.
Right.
Like I've watched it a bunch of times. I'm sure you've watched it a bunch of times. So whatever we say, just watch it if you haven't watched it. If you have watched it, watch it again because it's Unbreakable is a great movie.
Yeah, just because I agree with the same thing, and plus this movie came out 2000.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you haven't seen it by now, you probably don't really. But I'm just putting that.
Absolutely, I understand for sure. Well, there are some cases where maybe the person didn't even know the movie existed.
Right.
And I know from, the last few days talking to people about what we were going to do here, a lot of people didn't even realize these movies were tied together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so that's surprising to me. I almost said shocking, but it's surprising to me because, now granted, Split didn't blatantly come out and tell you that it was a continuation of the Unbreakable universe. But I was surprised when people didn't realize, at all.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw Split in the theaters with a bunch of my old roommates and friends, the ending scene with Bruce Willis came on, and my friend asked, he's like, "What's that about?" And I explained to him, like, "Oh, this means that it's a sequel to Unbreakable." He's like, "Well, that's dumb." I was so upset and mad, but you know what? I was like, okay, whatever.
Oh my goodness.
But anyway, back to Unbreakable.
I got it. Before you get back to point, and I don't mean to break up your thought process, but I find that hilarious, and I would suspect that your friend was not a comic book fan. And the reason I say that is because comics, nowadays everybody just expects things to be connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like there have been so many times in the past where you'd be reading a book. Like personally, I'm thinking of like in the 90s where it's like you turn the page and it's like, oh my goodness, and this character's here. Who would have thought, right? So that's the way I took the reveal in Split. It was like, oh look at that! It's you turn the page and it's like, and ta-da, we're in the same universe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I find it funny that somebody would be like, oh, that's dumb, and it's like, no, that's pretty cool to me. Like,
right, that's the whole thing where it's like, what did you? But yeah, trust me, I can go on like a 30-minute rant just about that. But I mean, okay, I'm not sure if M. Night Shyamalan, he directed this film, wrote the film, and this is M. Night Shyamalan when he like first began. So I know there's like a lot of jokes about him now with a lot of his films, but the three that are held in top regard were it's The Sixth Sense, then Unbreakable, and then Signs. Mm-hmm. And those are like his great movies that people hold in high regard. And this movie is M. Night Shyamalan literally at his best.
Oh, I agree 100%. Yeah. That's no knock on The Sixth Sense. I think that it is good, but I think it's less rewatchable than Unbreakable is.
Mm-hmm.
You can rewatch it and it have value, but Unbreakable, man, it's just right. Like there is not a thing in this movie where I'm like, oh, that doesn't make sense or it wouldn't work. It's like, no, it just feels, and here's the other thing, it feels so comic book like, and like by that I mean well written comic book like. So I often I feel like people have this misconception that it's all Adam West, pow, bang, whap, crap. I mean, not crap, but exaggerations. Whereas there are many a time when things aren't exaggerated, they're subtle and they're clear and concise, just like Unbreakable is, where it's like each one of these beats. Look at one of the beats that I forgot, but upon rewatching remembered was something so simple as when David Dunn walks into um, Samuel Jackson's shop, he says, "Oh, the exhibit's not for another 2 weeks," which tells you the timeline we're working with, because at the end of the film, that's where we're at. And I know it sounds crazy to praise something so simple, but I like when you it's almost the idea of Chekhov's gun, right? Which they actually do in this film. So David is going through his stuff in the closet. You see the gun. It's like, I wonder if this will come into play later. And so that's exactly what they do when he walks into the shop for the first time. It's like, we set up that this event will occur, and lo and behold, that's where we end, is on that event. And I'm like, I just appreciate when the setup has a payoff. That's all.
I agree. Quentin Tarantino, this is one of his favorite films.
Really?
Of all time. Yeah, he loves this film. And he said something that I found interesting. He said the premise of this movie is basically, what if Superman existed but he didn't know he was
100%.
Superman?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I actually like that premise a lot. But I think David Dunn is more than that, because to me, David knew he was special, but he kept it hidden from his wife out of love.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I love the scene where Samuel Jackson says to him, he's like, I don't think you got hurt in that car accident.
Yep. He's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, he was completely denying it. He's
well, like, it's awesome because he's like, how long's a football career? 8 years, 10 years if you're lucky. He's like, but how long's love? That's forever, right?
Right. And it's so beautiful that also David felt, not resentment, but it feels like the whole movie that he lost a piece of himself by keeping it hidden.
Well, and that again is the beauty of Samuel Jackson's character, is he says that sadness you're feeling is gone in the climactic scene.
Oh yes.
Because David is finally doing what he was meant to do, and he said, yeah, for the first time in ever, he woke up and it was gone.
And then when he was carrying his wife up the stairs when he saved the kids from the serial killer, and his son,
the son crying.
Yes,
when he's like
with the newspaper.
Me. Oh my god.
Yes. Oh man, that scene like breaks me every time.
Love it,
because his son is.
He believes. Yeah. Oh, and the kid always believed in his pops.
And I love that scene also because it like brings back to Glass. It's one of my favorite things about Glass is the son. When you have, we'll talk about that later, but
is it the research part where he goes and researches what the, so you were let's just jump there. You were praising the son, right? Because I love that the son returns.
Yes, I love the son, yes.
And so in the climactic scene of Glass, the son says it always is the parents that is a part of the origin story, right? Which I love because he's saying that his pops made him too, in some sort of way. But I loved it when the son is going back and researching what he can figure out about Kevin from Split, and he discovered, as soon as I see him doing research, I figure it out myself. Like I had never seen Glass before, but I see him doing research. And I'm like, oh, I already know where this is going, but I ain't mad about it. So there's this thing not only I but other people say about wrestling, right? Just because it's predictable doesn't mean it's bad. Because if it's the right decision to make, friggin' do it.
If it's so obvious that you just need to do it, then just do it.
Exactly.
It makes a sense. Don't try to don't try to be too smart. And I personally think that's kind of my issue with Glass, but that's nor here nor there. That's a little bit later.
Oh, is it when psychiatrist lady says, oh, he did this and then...
my favorite scene in the movie is with the psychiatrist talking to his son, saying how it's all fake, and you see the son like tearing up, like, no, it's not,
right?
And because he knows in his heart, but the psychiatrist is kind of making sense.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But he believes in his heart that his dad's a hero.
Here's the thing. We're completely skipping Split accidentally, but here's the thing. We'll go back to it obviously, right. But here's the thing about the psychiatrist whole gimmick to me in Glass. It just feels so natural. Because people want to make things normal, if you will. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, there's no way you're special. There's no way you're good at X, Y, or Z because that's just not how things are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just feels so natural for her motivations within the context, not only of the film, but life in general. Um, um, so there's like this trope, if you will, where if people tell you you can't do something, it's not them telling you what you can't do, it's them telling you what they believe they can't do.
Right.
And so that's the very much how I see her character, and especially her interactions with those who are more than regular.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, they're special.
yeah, special, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll talk about Glass here in a little bit, but yes, with Unbreakable, and you have Samuel Jackson's character. What's his actual name?
Price is his last name. God, I swear it's not Isaiah. It's Elijah.
Yeah, Elijah. Yes,
Elijah
thank
Price.
You. Yes, Elijah Price. Samuel Jackson is great in this film, from start to finish. But you feel the sadness because you see the Ferris wheel scene, the spinner, and he breaks all his bones, and you just feel like he's a mistake, and he believes that. But finally,
I gotta say, yes, he believes he's a mistake, but I don't know what your beef with Glass is, but there's a thing in that climax that makes me be like, it makes me think it's not over, but also, they talk about how for every one there's another one, right?
Mm-hmm.
So exactly what Samuel Jackson had believed all throughout Unbreakable and tried to prove, and then in the climax does prove. He says to Bruce Willis, he's like, I've been looking for you because you proved that I'm not a mistake. I'm not because they're basically yin and yang, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of them is super breakable, the other one's super hard to break,
right?
And so, yeah,
but with a superior intellect, and that goes more into
absolutely.
Glass about how smart Elijah is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Samuel Jackson is great, and him talking to his son, but getting David, Bruce Willis's character, to finally like open up and be more of himself, even about like his superpower, just touching people.
Yeah.
Getting the sense of like, ooh, something's wrong here. This person's doing bad things.
I gotta say that the psychiatrist, again, we keep skipping Split. Sorry, Split. But the psychiatrist plays that off so well. I wish I could remember her name, but she plays it off so well in Glass, making not just David, but even me for a moment believe, are you sure it's not just intuition?
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you saw, clay on his pants, and then remembered a story about whatever and put those pieces together, and then you saw a picture in your head. And I love that he's so defiant when he's like, no, that's not how it is. That's not what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, granted, he does waver for a moment in time, but it's even Price who Glass himself, because at this point he accepts that moniker of Mr. Glass. It's Samuel Jackson who convinces David Dunn that you have to be what you believe you are to stop us from being what we believe we are.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Yeah, and the reveal at the end that he's the one that was causing all these attacks of like a burning building, the train colliding, and finally he turns around and then Bruce Willis is like, oh my! But it's so perfect because it is in your face, like the whole entire time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so because it's not as though Samuel Jackson's hiding it. He says, this thing and that thing and even this. He's like, it's the first time I've ever heard there's a sole survivor and he's unharmed, and it's what he's been looking for this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And I love it. I freaking love Unbreakable. To me, 5 out of 5. It is a great. It's perfect. It's a great movie.
Mm-hmm.
Like.
Yeah, from start to finish.
Exactly. Yes.
I have nothing to complain about.
I literally like if it was standalone.
Yep.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
And even when the universe continued, I'm also happy. Like 5 stars for Unbreakable from Oz. Brandon?
Yeah. Oh, saying 5.
Just double checking.
Yep. 5. No. Yeah. Literally from start to finish, it is it's a beautiful film. It really is, and it doesn't feel like a comic book movie, but it is, and that's what
well, and there's a documentary. Have you ever watched Secret Origins of the DC Universe?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to watch it. I probably watched that damn thing 10 times. It's narrated by Ryan Reynolds.
Ooh, okay.
But it's just, now granted, it's made by Warner Brothers, so it's the glossed over pretty version of DC's origin. But why I bring this up is because I think it's Mark Waid. It could be Alex Ross. One of the talking heads in this documentary says, what happens if you put the best story with the best art? He said, well, you call it a comic book. But the fact is, and why I bring this up is because so you say, oh, it doesn't seem like a comic book movie. Well, to me, it's the perfect comic book movie because it is stunning visuals, it's intellectual, and it's compelling from start to finish. And so to me, it is not only a great comic book movie, it might be the best comic book movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, so this is why I said that it doesn't, is because people in their minds have like a comic book movie.
Oh, you're talking about
Spider-Man.
stereotypical. Yes. It is definitely not stereotypical comic book.
Like, not a Marvel movie. It does not feel like it is its own thing. And it doesn't feel like, oh, well, this is kind of like The Dark. No, it is literally its own. It's its own thing.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that.
Sorry. So
no,
that's
you're
what
good.
I
You're good.
by.
You're good. I just, anytime I get the opportunity, I will praise that documentary.
Mm.
It is the thing that taught me that Jerry Siegel and Joel Shuster were from Ohio, two poor kids from Cleveland, who created, the most iconic superhero, Superman, and it's just one of many things that gives me hope that success is achievable.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so like I said, I will always give that documentary praise, but same with Unbreakable, nothing but praise. But now that we've gotten our rating out of the way for Unbreakable, let's talk about the second film in the trilogy, Split. So as we had, I think we both already established, we did not know, or I definitely didn't know going in that Split was a sequel.
Yeah, at the time, no, I did not. And I saw it day one when it was released.
So it's funny, I didn't, because I am anti intentionally seeking things that seem as though they might frighten me.
Oh, okay.
So if I watch a thing and it has something intense or seemingly intended to provoke emotion, okie dokie, fine. But I'm not going to go out and seek something knowing that, oh crap, this is meant to scare me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I avoided Split, assuming, man, this is probably going to be one of those psychological, it's going to mess you up type of deals, just from the promotional material. Eventually, though, I did check it out because, whatever. I like movies. And then when I get to that finish and, it's revealed that it's in the same universe, I was like, all right, got to watch this again because what am I missing?
Mm-hmm.
And it thankfully wasn't, gory, because I was afraid with, 3 girls getting nabbed that...
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I was like, what are we doing up in here? And even there were times when watching I was like, what are the plans precisely? Because I don't want to see some unpleasantness.
Right, yeah. And, it's not...
Especially since he's so... capable.
Right. Well, there is one scene when, he's eating and you're like, oh crap. It's like, yo, this is serious. But besides that, it really isn't like bad on the brutal.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sense, yeah. Right. And especially given some of the personalities, especially what's the kid version name?
Who?
What?
Who?
His personality.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's not Helwig. It's not Ludwig.
It's Ludwig.
It's something like that.
Yeah.
But that character within the body of James McAvery. McAvoy. That's it. What's McAvery? Whatever.
Yeah.
Not him. But yeah, that character I think really helped humanize the captor character, because without the 9-year-old, and don't get me wrong, when we get to Glass, the 9-year-old character to me takes on even a deeper meaning.
Mm-hmm.
But without the 9-year-old personality, I'm not sure I would have ever cared for, the guy who is in the end revealed to be Kevin Wendell Crumb, because it's the innocence of the 9-year-old personality that really made me, I won't say empathize, but give a damn about the captor.
Oh, okay. I never really thought. I felt sympathy for him because of what's her name? The girl's name. I don't remember. Anya Taylor-Joy's character. That's the actress.
That's the primary.
Yeah. That's
one. Okay.
Yeah. I felt because you could see that it was foreshadowing like their connectivity because of their abuse.
Well, speaking of abuse, though, I think if Glass never existed, I would have been far more harsh on Split.
Okay.
Because I hated the flashback scenes when she didn't kill the uncle.
Oh, okay.
Like when she didn't, and then the movie ends with her going to the uncle. I'm like, what?
Well, I felt that when the police officer asked her, "Hey, is everything okay?" and she looks, then that is kind of saying that she told the police officer. But yes.
So, this is actually a primary complaint of mine.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel personally I'm supposed to put the piece of the puzzle together. You're telling me the story. If you don't tell me, then I don't know. Like, I can assume things, but I don't know until you tell me. And that's why when it's revealed, when she's talking to, I wish I could remember her name, but when she's talking to, it's fine, you can look it up, but when she's talking to, I think she's talking to Kevin legit, because he's the personality in the scene in Glass, but when she's talking to Kevin and she says, if it wasn't for you, or our time together, she would have never told the police about her uncle, then I was like, okay, that makes everything... Casey, thank you, yes. That makes all of Split better, because I just don't want to assume, and when they tell me that I don't have to assume, and what I wanted to, well, I still kind of wanted her to kill him, but regardless, I'm happier with her finding justice as opposed to her not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I was just saying, I think Glass improved Split in that way. It's actually one of the things that we talk about, or I talk about, in favor of Zack Snyder, is that when something is mentioned, he says, "Oh, don't worry, I got you the next time."
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if people actually mention this about Split, but like I thought it immediately, and then I watched Glass and I'm like, "Thanks, buddy."
Okay. So Split is clearly from the villains. You already know from the beginning Kevin's the bad guy, but it's called Split because he has multiple personalities.
Yes.
But the strongest one, the last one's called the Beast.
Yes.
And it's actually pretty terrifying. But
I gotta talk again about the doctor whose name we keep not remembering, but
oh yeah,
she does such a good job. I mean, I don't believe it, but she's doing her best to make me believe the Beast is all in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, it's just because you saw a rock climbing video, and you're messed up in the head anyway.
You work close to the zoo,
exactly.
And it's like, oh yeah, well, no, yeah, man.
So I'm like, you're doing your best. I appreciate you for that.
And so I like Split a lot.
Okay.
Not more than Unbreakable.
Yeah.
We talked about
that.
Yeah,
I'll agree. Before we continue talking, I will say Oz's rating of Split is 4 out of 5. I believe it is a good film. I don't believe it's great. I think that it could have been better for it to be just a little tighter. I thought, and I honestly, I'll say that about the entire trilogy. So the first film, it's freaking chef's kiss perfect at an hour 30, I think 4 minutes. But the second film goes to just shy of 2 hours. And I'm like, man, if you'd have cut down just a little bit here or there, would have made for a better film. And I have that same or very similar complaint with the duration of Glass being 2 hours and 9 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so, like I said, to me, Split is a 4 out of 5. It's very good, but it's not great.
Okay.
And do you want to give yours before we continue?
Yeah. So mine's 4.5. I have like one thing that I really don't like.
Okay.
And it's not a big one.
What is that? I'm curious.
It's
I mean, if it's not
the
lengthy.
doctor, and I like her character.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I like her character, but the only thing is, I felt that she was just exposition
Okay.
to make, and I think the deleted scenes because I have it on Blu-ray and I watched it, and she has a neighbor that she's in love with, but she can't go out with them because she's older, like much older. So I love that little dynamic that it gave her something more to do besides the exposition dump because I think she was great. Like she wants to help Kevin.
Mm-hmm.
She figures out like she tries to see him and things like that. But I just felt like she was just only there for exposition and not much anything more than that. That's my only critique.
It's interesting that you say that because I didn't feel like she was wasted, and only to the extent that the reason I say that is because yes, she assumes whom she's talking to a lot of the time, and she infers given how that they speak and the changes within the character, like she makes observations about you've fixed this thing 5 times, so you're clearly not this other personality. I don't know. I don't know. I didn't feel like she was explicitly exposition because I felt as though they were especially Casey was doing her damnedest to figure out as much as she could on her own.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I guess is the main reason why I don't feel like the Doctor was the primary exposition, because Casey was so good at discovering things, and we learned from her backstory that her father himself is very thoughtful and composed when it comes to thinking. So yeah, it's fine. I mean, I guess my only rebuttal to your thought is just that I didn't want it to be longer.
Yeah,
and so maybe cut something else and put that in. That's fine. But like, yeah, I love the hour 30 length. Like, I just feel like that's
it's so tight that nothing is wasted. No frame.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think Split is a very good film, and it surprisingly complements Unbreakable, because visually speaking, they are stark in contrast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I think it might be because of the perspective of the characters, because David is so reserved, and the film itself is very dark and reserved and just muted. Colors are emphasized when they need to be, like when Mr. Glass falls and breaks bones, but sees the glistening of the silver gun with the black grip, and those colors freaking pop because they are important to the story. And the same with other colors, they pop when relevant. The jumpsuit from the guy who is the strong villain in the toward the finish. So the orange that he's wearing when David bumps him, that jumps off the screen, because again, these are the moments where there are relevance. Whereas with Kevin, I don't feel like he is reserved. As a matter of fact, he's often out there, especially with the Doctor, and definitely with his captors. He ain't shy whatsoever. So
right.
I think that those choices are both storyline shown, but also visually represented with the lighting and other things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And especially when it comes to so since we've got the rating out for Split, let's move on to Glass. And they continue that color popping in this, and I especially notice it when Mr. Glass takes on his full mantle of putting on the purple, and it's just like, yeah, I'm cool with it. It's almost, it felt very Doctor Doom to me, where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna put this cloak on, and you're gonna know I am who I say I am, and so I just like it.
Yeah,
it's fun.
So already gonna start. So Glass, I did not like, and there's one thing that I did not like about Glass, and to me, it just kind of lowered the film, in my opinion.
What's that?
The ending.
Oh, what is wrong with the ending? Because I have a different complaint. It ain't the ending. Well, the ending drags on because I feel like in I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No,
I apologize. But I feel like the ending to Unbreakable is the perfect length, right? It reveals, and then it says, you're smart enough to understand this.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Glass, it's reveal, and then explain. It's like, no, I got it, pal. You didn't have to keep telling me. Like, you told me, and I'm done.
Yeah, that's
Oh, that's your okay.
that's one of my complaints.
Okay, cool.
I can't think of the actress's name, the doctor.
Sure.
I loved her. The one that's saying like, hey, all this stuff is just you guys having great intuition. You're just naturally strong, kind of thing.
Yeah, and in the case of Glass, very smart.
Smart, yeah. There's nothing.
You're
really
so
special.
smart. It's to your detriment almost.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Now the thing that I did not like about her is at the end, because they did the face-up profile. So you're telling me Mr. Pierce thought about all of this with the cameras and stuff? I'm like, okay, kind of like what you said. It's like, we got it, buddy.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
like you don't need to, and that just diminished her character.
Sure. Yeah.
I'm with you. The secret society. I'm like, okay. Also, I don't care when a main character dies. As Oz knows, and we talked about, I really don't care. But to me, how they killed David Dunn's character in a puddle, I was like, I get that he's weak because he was in the water tube. Absolutely. And he had to punch his way out, and then he just grabs, and I was like, maybe I would have. So this is probably a nitpick, but
for sure.
But to me, it's like that I would have redone. Don't care that he dies. It's like,
yeah. Well, I actually like that all three of them die.
Right. Yes.
So as soon as the first one's down, I'm like, oh, I get it. I see what we're doing here.
And I knew Kevin was probably going to. Like,
sure.
Yeah, most definitely.
But yeah, as soon as we started the deal, I was like, oh, I get it. I get what's going on. But I guess that's so you might actually make me lower my score because I have similar opinions. I just didn't think of them as negatively as I see that your point is.
Yeah.
Now, I think you make a good point about there are good things in Glass, right? The as soon as I saw David's son as an adult, and what I mean by that is often John Connor's a good example of this, right? Kids get recast and kids get recast and kids get recast. When I saw David's son as an adult, I was like, oh, that's clearly the kid as an adult. And I was just like, that is so cool, because them running a 24-hour surveillance company makes perfectly good sense. They want to serve and protect. They want to look out for people and be, what David is to the world, which is a protector.
Right. And I like the M. Night Shyamalan cameo that he puts in all three films. Like the first one, he's carrying the gun, and David...
No. He was picking up drugs.
Yes, correct. Sorry.
He didn't have them on him that time, but he says, oh, you worked at the college, right? He's like, oh, I was with some bad folks at that time.
But then, he's the same character that's in Split.
Smart. Because
I
was just going to say, you could easily discount who he is in Split. Because I did when I first saw him. I was like, oh, there's no way he's the same guy. It's just M. Night Shyamalan being M. Night Shyamalan putting himself there.
Right.
But when he acknowledges in Glass that David helped put him in the right path, inadvertently, obviously, that's when I put the connection. I was like, he's still playing the same guy. That's so great.
Right. And it just shows like, hey, people, just because they're doing something bad maybe in the past, can change to do something. It just like had a little bit of touching like feelings.
100%, absolutely, I agree that it had heart. In the early part of the film, with M. Night Shyamalan and the son, and definitely all the stuff David's still doing, and the fact that he's struggling to keep it up after 20 years of going strong,
Yeah, and I love that how he spots Kevin. Is he sees Ludwig dancing, and he's like, what the heck? And he follows him, and because there was cheerleaders that were kidnapped, and people are looking all over for him. And I love that fight scene, by the way, because it's not like pew, dear. It's like not even, it's just dudes just like out wrestling each other. But you could see Kevin's face is like, wait, this ain't supposed to, because he's the beast.
That's one of the things that he says, though, often, like regularly within the context of being locked up in the asylum, is he can't beat the Beast. Does he think he can beat the Beast? He's not better than the Beast. And I love that he's so obsessed with that idea. Like, yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
It's just interesting.
And even Kevin the Beast wants to know who the heck was that guy, because he was squeezing him like what he usually does to kill people, but it's like this guy's not breaking.
Yeah.
And it's just I love like the beginning of the film, and when the psychiatrist, Dr. Emily's whatever,
It's Ellie.
yeah, Sarah Paulson's character,
Yeah.
whatever, and her just talking about like, hey, maybe that you just have great intuition. You know, people have stuff like that, a sleight of hand.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like you have sleight of hand and things like that. But like what Oz was talking about, and we were explaining, is the side characters. You get to see like Casey, the uncle who was abusing her, gets put away in jail, and you see that she's living her life in happiness. Like she has her friends.
Well, and because that was one of the biggest things early on in Split was, her friends only invite her because of obligation.
Right.
So she would have been the only person they didn't invite from class, and so they felt they must invite her. And whereas within the context of Glass, it was fairly clear that she had grown as a person and was able to move forward. And it sure seemed as though she accredited Kevin for that in the climax of the film.
Mm-hmm. Because Split, I love the line of the damaged are always that gives a tear in my puts a tear in my my face all the time, because that's just a powerful, because you know the Beast is opening up the bars, but he sees all her cuts and stuff, her self-inflicted wounds, and he's like, oh, you're like me.
Mm-hmm.
And then he lets her live because of that, and it's like, oh wow, that's pretty powerful.
Well, what it is biblical. You know, the meek shall inherit the earth.
Okay.
Conceptually, it's very, like I said, it's very biblical because of the idea that yes, you might be, and in her case, might feel less than, but broken, exactly. But you know, it doesn't mean there's no hope. Mm-hmm. And I think that what Glass does well, it does really well, and what it does poorly, it does really poorly. So that's
it's just how it is.
It's the mixed bag of it, and I think that again, edited down, mm-hmm. made more clear and concise. Having faith in your audience, like M. Night Shyamalan did with Unbreakable. Mm-hmm. I mean, heck, and Split to some degree. I think would have benefited the film.
Yeah, greatly.
I see that your point is now, but
I mean, there's a couple of other sorts.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, those, and to me, Unbreakable and Split were very personal stories about the characters and what they're facing. Even a little bit of the side characters to a degree.
Oh, definitely. Well, especially with Casey.
Yes, with
all
Casey,
about
right.
Her story was very important.
And to me, this ending of Glass, it stopped being personal, and it kind of was trying to be grand like the MCU, or not in a
May I make a couple of proposals?
Yeah.
Proposal number 1: don't call the movie Glass. I think that was a mistake to begin with.
Okay.
Proposal number 2: make the doctor. Can you look up her name real quick?
Yeah.
The primary character. Maybe that'll help with the renaming concept. And what I mean by that is if she's the primary character, right? Mm-hmm. And everybody around her is just around her, right? Then that can change the focus of the film, make it more personal, because you can...
Sarah Paulson, but her character name is Dr. Ellie Staple.
Yes, Dr. Ellie Staple. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you... So if you go Unbreakable, Split, and Staple, right? Whatever.
Ooh, okay. Yeah.
Conceptually speaking. Or, you know, the doctor's in. I don't care what you call it, right? But just not Glass, because I thought from the moment the film started, it ought not to be called Glass. Mr. Glass doesn't accept his moniker until close to the midway point. He's a mute for a greater majority of it. I agree. I think and I'm definitely going to change my score now that I agree with you. But I long thought it shouldn't be called Glass upon watching it. And upon further review, analytics of it, I think that it should have been A, named after the Doctor, and B, she should have been the main character. That way, you can understand that she was groomed into the secret society.
Okay.
That explains her motivations behind trying to convince them, right? And then secondarily, when it's revealed at the end, the thing that we have been getting told the whole time, which because that's how all of these do it,
Yep.
then it will all make more sense. And you can still have Mr. Glass be happy in the climax because he's right. Because, now granted, maybe it's called Glass because people are familiar with Samuel L. Jackson, he's popular, and, you know, it just clearly ties it together. Right. But I would be happier if it was named after her, she was the main character, and you just let it play out. Because there was basically only one additional piece of information revealed about Mr. Glass. And that's that, and it's not even him per se, it's just that he inadvertently created Kevin's split personalities.
Right, because of Dad.
Because he accidentally or unintentionally killed his father.
On the train.
That
David Dunn was on.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, that could have easily been revealed with the film being the Doctor's origin, her being the primary person, and it wouldn't make the, as you put it, secret society come out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
Although, personally speaking, well, I'll say this off air, but I'll say that. But since I want to get off air, my rating for Glass before we had this conversation was going to be a 3 out of 5. But Brandon has talked me into it. It has been downgraded. I mean, unintentionally, he talked me into it. I've decided to downgrade my rating for Glass to a 2 out of 5. But, as I said before the open rolled, it's just got to be majority rules. So, for the channel of Mr. Super Oz and from Oz, the Eastrail, Eastrail 177 Trilogy lives on.
Yep.
Brandon, what about you?
Yeah, I give Glass a 2. And it's sad because I actually was gelling with this film when it began until it was just the ending to me. It was M. Night Shyamalan outsmarting himself, kind of like where we just talked about a couple of minutes ago. Like, hey, when something is so obvious, you kind of just...
Exactly.
And I just think he outsmarted himself a little bit. But, yeah, I give this a 2. But the same thing...
Yeah, majority rules?
Yeah, so, majority rules.
Hell yeah. We get
definitely watch Unbreakable because that is great. Like,
oh my goodness.
Unbreakable, I mean, literally, just if there was a stamp of approval that Brandon or Oz can give, that would...
yes, exactly.
that I think the majority would just love that movie. So
people say FDA, or things say FDA approved, right? Mm-hmm. Well, this is Mr. Super Oz approved, for sure. Anyway, thank you for coming, brother. Yeah, oh, it was so fun. And thanks for watching. Before we get out of here, there are limited copies of my 68-page graphic novel, Everlasting Survivors, All Day Long, Volume 1. Still available at Etsy.com. There is a link in the description. See you on Wednesday. See you next weekend. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. See you.